when I see people like Shaw coming back into the team. The nearer we're getting to kick-off, the more worried I'm getting, actually. I think I was fine about 2 hours ago. Oh, well, but the more I look at the players and I'm looking at them getting warmed up and I see the silly hats, I don't know. You know what? And I've heard Ollie getting interviewed there and Maguire and Adrana, but as if their mindset is let's not be beaten. And that kind of negative talk already. No, I'm worried, I have to say.
It's the hat. It's the hat that's done it, Graham. It's tipped Roy over the edge.
I think... I can't steal what's going off here.
Let's start, Danny, with your time at Manchester United, coming through the academy, your experiences of what Roy Keane was like with the youngsters at the club.
He, in my opinion, you know, and I'll give a story in a second, he was absolutely brilliant. You know, he didn't suffer fools. I think he respected the younger players if they were trying to do the right thing. If they got a little bit above their station, then he would be the first one to tell them. And you know, when I joined at the time as an apprentice, you know, I was quite fortunate because they had some world-class players, but they also had the younger players that were coming through, the likes of Beckham, the Scholes, the Butts, the Nevilles. So you could actually chat with them about the position that they'd found themselves in being apprentices not so long ago. So they just gave you, you know, that little bit of help and advice. But as for Roy Keane, I used to clean his boots when I was an apprentice, and it was something that I loved. I used to go home afterwards and tell my mates that, you know, I'd been cleaning Roy Keane's boots. And he used to give me his old boots. So when I first became an apprentice at United, he was sponsored by Hi-Tech. And then I used to get his old Hi-Tech boots. And then he went to Diadora, and he did exactly the same thing with Diadora boots as well. He would give me his older boots that he hadn't probably worn that much. And I actually made my debut in his boots for Manchester United. But there was one particular afternoon where I didn't know what to expect. We used to train at the Cliff, but in the afternoons at times we'd go over and we'd have to drive over to Littleton Road, which was another part of the training ground. So I came back after training, and Jonathan Greening, who went on to have a really good career in the Premier League as well, he was waiting for me, and he said, "Have you seen Roy?" And I was like, "No, why? What's the problem?" He said, "He's absolutely fuming with you." And I was like, "Oh no. This cannot be the case." I was like, "Why?" I said, what is the problem? And he said, "Well, you know that he gives you his Diadora boots?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, he's came in here fuming because he said that somebody on your behalf has rung Diadora to try and get a boot deal." And at that time, you know, agents weren't necessarily looked upon fondly, in particular for younger players, because we had everything that we needed at United. And I was just taken aback because I had no idea where this had come from. So I've got into my car and I'm driving home and I'm having all these thoughts going through my head. And I'm thinking, I don't want to turn up at the Cliff tomorrow, having had a full afternoon, full evening of thinking about this, and then having to go and deal with, you know, the anger from Roy, and quite rightly so, because of what he perceived to be the truth at the time. So I got home and I took it into my own hands, and I actually rang the club up and I said, "If possible, can I please have Roy's home number?" So fortunately, I was given it. So I rang up, and as I'm ringing, like I say, I'm only maybe 18 years of age at the time. I've got my phone in my hand, and I'm just not knowing what to expect. And his wife answered the phone, and the first thing she said to me was that he's out walking the dogs. So I was like, "Right, okay, do you mind if I call back in about 15, 20 minutes? And she was like, "Yeah, absolutely no problem at all." So I rang back in 15, 20 minutes. And by the way, it's probably the longest 15, 20 minutes of my life, just waiting, you know, the trepidation of what was going to be happening on the other end of the phone. So I rang him, and this time he answered, and I was fully expecting for him to, you know, really go off at me. And it was the complete opposite. He just said to me, he said, "Danny," he said, "listen," he said, "what's the situation?" He said, "Have you got an agent? Have you got somebody that's been getting in touch with Diadora to get the boots?" And I said, "No." I said, "You know, you've always said to me, you will give me your boots. We don't need an agent." And he said, "Danny," he said, "you're doing well in the game." He said, "As you quite rightly said, I will give you your boots, but you don't need an agent at this present time." And it was just unbelievable to have that chat with him, because people always talk about Roy Keane being this fiery competitor. Obviously, I had him as a manager at Sunderland, and that is 100% true. But there's also another side to him as well. He's a very, very intelligent individual. And that bit of advice that he gave me on the phone, albeit, you know, there was no truth in the fact that somebody had rung Diadora on my behalf, it just really set me in good stead for the future. And then I made my full debut alongside him. And I never forget, I just wanted to get the first touch of the ball. It was at Old Trafford, obviously the team that I've supported all my life. And there was a 50-50 with Emile Heskey, who was obviously one of Leicester City's main players at the time. And I just got there just before him, and I got the ball and I passed it off maybe to Roy or whoever it was in midfield. And he just looked at me and gave me a stare. And I just thought to myself, I wonder why that is, because I was absolutely delighted I'd got my first touch. And when there was a breaking play, he came up to me and he said, you had an opportunity there to leave your marker, to let him know that he was in the game this afternoon. And it's something that was so true. And it was another very valuable early lesson for me, something that I understood as time went by and I got more experience in the game. So, you know, having him in that position as well as a teammate for very few games, but it was an absolute privilege.